Welcome to this week's episode of Coffee with a Side of Economics. This week we're excited to join Dr. Tom Sadler as he discusses the economics of local food networks.
Hello, this is Dr. Tom Sadler. I want to talk a little bit about a course that I'm teaching right now this spring semester that I've taught every spring semester since 2011, and it's a general honors course called GH302, Economics of Sustainable Food. And in this course, what we do is we talk about industrial agriculture, but we also talk about local food networks, which I want to focus on a little bit in this presentation. We read 4 books in the class, the first one being the famous book Omnivore's Dilemma. And in this book, Omnivore's Dilemma, we talk about industrial agriculture and how much we rely on processed food. We focus on industrialization and the fact that most of our food that we consume entails many, many food miles. On average, say in the United States, 1,500 to 2,000 miles traveled for the food that we often eat. But the book also has a very important section on the perfect meal, where the author, Michael Pollan, talks about the fact that his perfect meal comes from locally sourced food. And this locally sourced food sets the stage for further readings. In our second book in the course, we read a book called Hippie Food. And Hippie Food addresses the 1960s food counterculture. And the 1960s food counterculture was a representation of rebellion against the industrial food system. So many people broke off into groups and established their own local food networks. And what was interesting about this era is it gave rise to a lot of movements that are still with us to this day, including vegetarianism, social awareness, not just with respect to food, but with respect to social activism, and then the environmental movement, and once again, the idea of locally sourced food. The third book that we read in this class, Anything That Moves, talks more about the modern food movement, and it talks about exotic food choices that often exist in places like LA and New York City. The difference with this third book, Anything That Moves, is it talks about the fact that with a global food network, it's often the case that food has to be imported from places all over the world. The fourth and final book that we read in the class is called The Town That Food Saved. And this is about a small town in Vermont that struggled economically for a long period of time until a number of residents of the community decided to turn things around and focus on a local food network. And they established a local food network. So what they did is they employed local farmers to serve food in things like farmers markets, or offer food in things like farmers markets, and community-supported agricultural systems and food stores. And so these were locally sourced food items based on the idea that food needs sunlight to grow, and it feeds local residents. And there are many very interesting examples. And so the economics of this local food market talks about the multiplier effect in a local food network and many other aspects that are beneficial for a town. And so The Town That Food Saved concludes with the fact that food can be a very, very good way for a local community to focus its choices, try to bring itself up economically. I recommend all 4 books.
That concludes this week's episode of Coffee with a Side of Economics. Be sure to join us next week when I, Dr. Lynn, discuss the economics of vaccinations and the recent measles outbreak.